Your bird's cage does not smell because you are not cleaning it enough. It smells because you are cleaning the wrong layer entirely. Every spray you have ever bought is evaporating off the surface, while the real bacterial colony sits 2 inches below it, completely untouched, rebuilding itself every single time. Japanese bird keepers solved this permanently over 100 years ago with a 3-layer substrate system that costs less than $30 and makes the cage smell like a cedar forest instead of an animal enclosure. So why has nobody in the Western bird hobby ever told you about it? I know that smell. I know exactly what it feels like to walk into your own bird room and hit a wall of it. Not a faint mustiness, not the kind of thing you can talk yourself out of noticing. The kind that stops a guest at the doorway. The kind you have become so used to that you only really understand how bad it is when you see someone else's face. That happened to me. A friend came over, walked as far as the hallway, and just sort of paused. She did not say anything. She did not have to. And I stood there knowing that I had been telling myself for months that it was not that bad. It was that bad. I had done everything you were supposed to do. I changed the paper every day. I wiped the bars twice a week with a vinegar solution. I tried baking soda in the tray. I bought 2 different brands of commercial enzymatic spray. I tried one called Nature's Miracle, which costs about $18 a bottle and promises to eliminate odor permanently through enzyme action. It worked for about 6 hours. Then the smell came back, and I am not exaggerating when I say it came back worse than before. I bought an air purifier with a HEPA filter and an activated carbon layer, cost me $140. It reduced the smell in the room slightly. It did nothing about the cage itself. I bought scented cage liner paper, the kind that is supposed to absorb and neutralize at the same time. It smelled like fake lavender layered on top of the original problem. After about 2 days, the lavender was gone and the problem was exactly where it had been. At some point, I had spent close to $300 on products that between them had not solved the problem for a single full day. And I still had a bird room that smelled like a bird room. I started to believe this was just what bird rooms smelled like, that it was inevitable, that some people were just better at masking it, and I needed to find a better masking product. That was the wrong frame entirely, and I held it for 3 years before someone corrected it. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. The turning point was a conversation I stumbled into on a forum thread about Japanese Majiro keepers. Majiro are Japanese white eyes, small songbirds that have been kept indoors in Japan for hundreds of years, often in tiny cages in one-room apartments in dense urban neighborhoods. These keepers do not have backyards. They do not have dedicated bird rooms or ventilation systems or commercial-grade air purifiers. They keep birds in living spaces, in bedrooms, in kitchens, in spaces where smell is simply not an option because there is nowhere else to go. There is no second room to isolate the odor in. There is no outdoor space to air the cage in a different direction from. The cage and the human share the same air, full stop. And yet their cages do not smell. Not faintly less smell, no smell at all. I found this impossible to believe until I found a forum post from a keeper in Osaka who had been maintaining 6 Majiro in a 1-bedroom apartment for 22 years with no odor complaint from his wife, his neighbors, or himself. He described his substrate approach in about 4 sentences. I read those 4 sentences 3 times before I understood what they were actually saying, and then I understood what I had been doing wrong for 3 years. Here is what is actually happening in your cage tray right now. Your bird produces droppings. Those droppings land on the substrate surface, and the top layer looks dry within a few hours. But the moisture in the dropping is not gone. It has moved downward into the lower layers of whatever substrate you are using. Paper towels, cage liner paper, corn cob bedding, it does not matter. The moisture migrates down and collects in a thin, wet layer at the bottom of the tray, usually right against the tray floor itself. That layer stays wet. it stays warm, it stays dark, and it becomes a near-perfect environment for anaerobic bacteria, the specific kind that do not need oxygen and that produce ammonia and sulfur compounds as metabolic byproducts. Those compounds are your smell. The surface of the cage looks clean because you are cleaning it. The bacterial colony underneath it is completely undisturbed because nothing you are doing is reaching it. When you spray an enzymatic cleaner on the bars or the surface of the substrate, you are treating the top layer. The enzymes work on what they touch. They evaporate within hours. The anaerobic colony 2 layers below the spray is sitting in a wet, oxygen-free environment where enzymes do not penetrate and where the bacteria face no competition from anything. They rebuild within hours of your cleaning. The smell returns not because you did not clean hard enough, but because you did not address the conditions the bacteria need to survive. This is the core thing. It is not a cleaning problem, it is an environmental problem, and you cannot solve an environmental problem with a cleaning product. Here is the contrast that should make you uncomfortable. Professional birdcage cleaning services exist in most major cities. They charge between $60 and $120 per visit. They come in with industrial enzymatic sprays. They clean all the surfaces. They replace the substrate. They wipe down every bar and perch. It looks thorough. It smells clean for a day or two. Then it goes back to exactly where it was, because the professional service is doing the same thing you are doing at home, just with more expensive equipment. They are cleaning the surface while the bacterial colony in the wet base layer rebuilds itself untouched. A $30 substrate system that you set up once and maintain for 3 minutes a day solves a problem that a $100 professional cleaning visit does not and cannot solve without a completely different approach. The Japanese solution is not a product, it is a principle. The principle is this: if you eliminate the wet layer, the bacterial colony cannot establish. No moisture zone, no colony, no smell. The system that Japanese Majiro keepers developed, known as kakushi-so, which translates roughly to hidden layer management, is a 3-layer substrate approach designed to wick moisture away from the surface, hold it in a desiccant layer at the base, and treat the zone between the 2 layers with natural antimicrobials that make the environment hostile to bacterial growth before it can even begin. The logic is the same logic a good farmer uses when draining a field. You do not kill the mosquitoes after they hatch. You eliminate the standing water they need to hatch in. I rebuilt my entire cage substrate in 1 afternoon. I spent $28. The smell was gone in 72 hours, not reduced. Gone. Here is exactly what I did, in the order I did it. The first thing is to strip everything out completely. The tray, the grate if you have one, all the substrate, everything out and set aside. Wash the tray with plain white vinegar and very hot water. Not dish soap. Soap residue clings to the tray surface and holds moisture against it, which is exactly what you do not want. White vinegar is acidic enough to kill surface bacteria, and it evaporates completely dry. Rinse with hot water and then leave the tray somewhere with good airflow, sunlight if possible, for at least an hour until it is completely dry. Not damp, not mostly dry. Completely dry. This step costs nothing, and most people skip it because it feels unnecessary once the tray looks clean. Do not skip it. You are not just cleaning the tray, you are removing the existing colony from the surface before you build a system designed to prevent a new one. Starting with residual moisture or residual bacteria means your new system is fighting from behind on day 1. The second layer is the one most Western bird keepers have never encountered, and it is the layer that does the majority of the work. Before you put any substrate down, you put a thin layer of food-grade diatomaceous earth directly on the dry tray floor. About 1/8 of an inch is enough, no more than 1/4 inch. Diatomaceous earth is a naturally occurring sedimentary mineral ground to a very fine powder, made from the fossilized shells of tiny aquatic organisms called diatoms. It is a desiccant. It absorbs moisture on contact and holds it without releasing it back. When moisture from a dropping migrates downward through the substrate layers and reaches the DE, it is absorbed and held there. The layer above the DE stays dry. Anaerobic bacteria require sustained moisture to survive and colonize. Put them in a dry environment, and they cannot establish. The DE layer creates that dry environment at the base of the tray where the wet zone used to live. The brand I use is Permagard Fossil Shell Flour, available on Amazon or at any farm supply store. About $18 for a 2-pound bag that will last you several months of full cage treatment. One critical note, and I want to be clear about this: it must be food-grade diatomaceous earth. There is a pool-grade variety used in swimming pool filtration, and it is processed at high temperatures in a way that crystallizes the silica structure and makes it dangerous if inhaled by birds or by you. Food grade is unprocessed and safe. It says food grade on the label. If the label does not say food grade, do not use it. On top of the DE base goes the wicking layer. Lay flat, unscented white paper towels directly on the diatomaceous earth, 2 to 3 layers thick, overlapping at the edges so there are no gaps in coverage. The paper towels serve 2 functions. They give you a quick change surface you can remove and replace in 30 seconds without disturbing the DE below. And they act as a passive wick, drawing moisture downward from anything above and into the DE beneath before it has time to pool. The paper stays surface dry to the touch within a few minutes of a dropping because the moisture is moving down and not sitting. Change the paper every 1 to 2 days, or whenever you see saturation. The DE beneath it does not need to be replaced for 2 to 3 weeks, at which point you simply discard the old DE, wipe the tray dry, and put down a fresh 1/8 inch of new powder. A 2-pound bag of Permagard will cover that replacement cycle for 2 months or more in a standard cage. On top of the paper towel layer goes the element that makes this system specifically Japanese: Hinoki cypress shavings. Hinoki is the wood used in traditional Japanese construction, in bathhouses, in the floors of tea ceremony rooms. It has a specific smell that most people find immediately clean and pleasant. That smell is not cosmetic. It comes from high concentrations of naturally occurring phytoncides in the wood, specifically alpha-pinene and limonene, which are antimicrobial and antifungal compounds that suppress bacterial activity chemically. A thin layer of hinoki shavings on the cage floor creates an environment where bacteria approaching from above encounter active chemical suppression, while the DE below prevents moisture accumulation from providing the conditions they need to establish anyway. The bacteria have no entry point. The product I use is Suwapet's Japanese Hinoki bird bedding, available on Amazon for about $14 a bag, which lasts approximately 2 months for a standard medium cage. The shavings smell clean the same way cedar smells clean, but lighter. Birds forage in them naturally and seem to find them interesting in a way that standard paper liner does not provide. There is one more source of odor that almost everyone misses and that will undermine everything else you do if you leave it untreated: the wood perches. The base of a wood perch, particularly the lower surface, and the ends where the perch meets the cage bars, accumulates dropping buildup that absorbs into the wood grain and creates a secondary bacterial environment. You can spray the outside of a wood perch every day and not reach the bacteria that have colonized the interior grain. What actually works is soaking. Every 2 weeks, take the wood perches out and submerge them in a 50-50 solution of white vinegar and water for 30 minutes. The acidity penetrates the grain and kills the colony inside the wood. Then lay them flat in direct sunlight for a minimum of 4 hours until they are completely dry through the center, not just the surface. The combination of vinegar and UV exposure does what no spray can do to a porous wood surface. If you have rope perches, replace them every 6 weeks. Rope perches hold moisture and bacterial material inside the fibers where nothing reaches it. They are good for foot grip and enrichment and worth using, but past 6 weeks, they are a liability. The daily routine on this whole system takes about 3 minutes. Every morning, take a slotted kitchen spoon and lift the surface hinoki layer. Scoop out visible droppings, check the paper towel layer underneath for wet spots, and replace any saturated sections. The DE beneath is undisturbed and continues working. That is all. 3 minutes, no sprays, no chemical products, no recurring expense beyond paper towels, and a periodic DE refresh. The bacterial colony never gets the sustained moisture environment it needs because the moisture disappears downward within minutes of arriving. I want to tell you something I did not expect when the smell finally went away. The birds themselves changed. Within about a week of switching to this system, my conure became noticeably more active in the mornings, more vocal, more engaged during foraging. I told myself it was probably coincidence. Then I read about avian respiratory sensitivity, and I stopped telling myself that. A bird's respiratory system is more sensitive to airborne irritants than a mammal's by a significant margin. The ammonia and sulfur concentrations that you register as a noticeable smell are concentrations that have already been affecting your bird's airways for some time. Behavioral changes that bird owners frequently attribute to boredom or stress or illness, reduced vocalization, increased feather plucking, lower activity, can in many cases trace back to chronic low-level ammonia exposure from a substrate problem the owner has learned to stop noticing. The cage smells normal to you because you are always in it. Your bird is always in it too. A Meijiro keeper named Tanaka Hiroshi, who has maintained Japanese white-eyes in a one-bedroom Osaka apartment for over 40 years with no detectable odor, said something I have not been able to stop thinking about. He said, "The room should smell like wood, not like bird. If it smells like bird, the bird is telling you something is wrong." He meant it as a diagnostic principle, not a metaphor. A correctly managed cage should smell like the hinoki in the tray and nothing else. If you can smell the bird, you can smell ammonia. And if you can smell ammonia, your bird has been breathing it every day. The commercial product industry knows the bacterial colony is in the wet layer. The enzymatic sprays are designed to suppress surface bacteria, not reach the anaerobic colony beneath. They work well enough to justify a repeat purchase. They do not work well enough to eliminate the need for the next bottle. That gap is where the recurring revenue lives. A $30 substrate rebuild that you maintain for 3 minutes a day is not something that shows up on a store shelf because it does not need to be restocked. That is why you have never seen it advertised. Tonight, pull the tray. Let it dry completely. Order the PermaGuard and the Suapets Hinoki from the links in the description. You can have the full system down by tomorrow morning. Give it 72 hours and come back to the comments and tell me what happened. Tell me what your bird room smelled like before. Tell me what it smells like after. I read every comment and I want to know how it works in your setup, your bird, your cage size, your climate. Next time I am going to show you the specific perch shape that Japanese Meijiro keepers have used for 200 years. A design that most Western bird owners have never seen, that prevents the foot and nail problems that develop slowly and silently in birds kept on standard round dowel perches until the damage is already too far along to reverse easily. It is a 10-minute change that takes nothing but 2 perches and a screwdriver, and it is almost certain that no one in a Western pet store has ever mentioned it to you.